Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours, Economics 330, Global Trade and Political Economy. I'm at Evans College, City University of New York. Today, of course, is Tuesday, October 31st, 2023. And the 5 minutes of grace that I typically allow has now elapsed, and we're going to start with lectures for this office hour. So in the previous 2 weeks, as you will recall, we have covered the following two topics. One, international monetary relations, and two, global trade relations. As we continue in this week 10, and our third of three segments that began in Module 8, we will focus on trade regionalization. Now, some scholars see regional trade agreements, or RTAs, which is distinct from multilateralism, as expressed by the World Trade Organization as a stepping stone to eventual world trade liberalization, to eventual worldwide liberalization of trade, while others see them as an obstacle to global free trade. Economists describe RTAs, which again is regional trade agreements, as existing in 5 stages or levels of integration. The most basic level of integration is a free trade area. Member states in a free trade area eliminate tariffs and other restrictions on substantially all trade with each other, but each member can retain its own trade policies towards non-member states. Thus, a free trade area poses less of a threat to national sovereignty and is more acceptable to states with politically sensitive relationships. And we will get to this into a little bit more detail as we move along. More than 90% of RTAs today are free trade agreements. The United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, UMCA, is an important example of an FTA. I do note that some of the readings for this week also mentioned NAFTA, which is the North American Free Trade Agreement. Note that the North American Free Trade Agreement transitioned into USMCA in the same way that you can think of the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trades evolving into WTA. So the second stage of regional trade agreement is customs union, or CU. A customs union has same characteristics as a free trade area, plus common external tariffs, or CET, towards outside states. Put differently, in a customs union, the member countries do not charge tariffs on goods traded between them, and they set the same tariff on goods imported from a third country or countries outside of the customs union territory. A CU normally creates institutions to administer the common tariff, and the CU members have less ability to make independent decisions. So obviously there's more integration in a customs union than a regional trade agreement. Compared with FTAs, the number of customs union is relatively small. So you have more free trade areas than you do customs unions. The most important CU or customs union is the European Union. But as we will soon learn, the European Union is more than a customs union. For instance, the EU is in a customs union with Andorra, San Marino, and Turkey, and with the exception of certain goods, of course. And while Turkey's membership of a customs union with the EU is recognized as having played a significant part in transitioning Turkey's economy from agrarian to industrial, however, the free trade agreement areas signed by the EU do not extend to Turkey. This is an important point to note because EU's custom unit extends to non-EU member states. As I mentioned, EU is more than a customs union. So the custom union that binds the EU extends to some other countries that are not in the European Union, and Turkey is one such example. Consequently, the free trade agreement partner can export to Turkey tariff-free while maintaining tariffs on Turkish goods imported into EU free trade partners, unless they also coincide with a separate FTA with Turkey. I should note, though, that Turkey and the EU are now negotiating to amend the customs union agreement to add Turkey to present and future free trade agreements that the EU goes into. But this would, of course, have the effect of also stripping the Turkish government of some of its sovereign authority to negotiate independent deals. And we will get to that a little bit as we move forward. The third is a common market. A common market has the same characteristics as a customs union, plus the free mobility of factors of production, labor, and capital among members. As I mentioned, the EU is more than a customs union. It is indeed a common market that includes free mobility of factors of production. The increased labor mobility induces members to establish similar health, safety, educational, and security standards so that no country's workers have a competitive advantage. Here's what I mean by that. Imagine if Mexico, Canada, and the United States were in a common market instead of a free trade area. That means that citizens of the three countries can move freely between any of the three countries, live in any of the three countries, and trade tariff-free in any of the three countries. Now, if one of these three countries offers better pay, better health and safety standards, and educational and social security standards, of course, it would then create brain drain from the other countries into the country that has the highest standards. So in order for the countries to remain competitive, independently competitive within a common market, there becomes a de facto convergence of standards, if not a de jure convergence of standards. And this is one of those phrases and words that I told you to look out for I encourage you to look out for every class. De facto is by law. De jure, de jure is by law. And de facto is by convention. It's not, but you don't have to do it, but the normal convention or logic dictates that you do. So de facto and de jure by law, de facto is logic, the flow of events. The fourth is an economic union. An economic union has the characteristics of a common market, and it harmonizes members' industrial, regional, transport, fiscal, and monetary policies. A full economic union also includes a monetary union with common currency. As discussed, 16 EU members have joined the Economic and Monetary Union, EMU, and adopted the euro as their common currency. And the fifth and last of the group is a political union. A political union has the characteristics of an economic union and also harmonizes members' foreign and defense policies. A fully developed political union is more like a federal political system than an arrangement among sovereign states. So just to quickly recap, in an economic union, so the monetary policy and the currency is harmonized, which is why countries of the European Union all use the euro. Before Brexit or Britain's exit from the European Union, Britain used to be the only member, it was granted an exemption, and it was the only member that maintained its national currency, the pound. But since Britain's exit, there is a unanimity in the adoption of euro among EU countries. But that also requires a harmonization of monetary and fiscal policies. While this has some advantages, I should note that it has some challenges. And this leads to the second question on this week's assignment, some of the challenges that come from the European Union. In terms of the fiscal challenges, the monetary challenges, and transportation to make sure that each region is competitive. It is important to note that these stages of integration are models that do not fully describe reality. So these stages are really just a framework to understand the core distinctions in the 5 major types of regional trade agreements. Many RTAs, or regional trade agreements, blur the lines of these distinct classifications. For instance, the UMCA, which is the US-Mexico-Canada Trade Agreement, as an example, is a stage 1 as an FTA. But its provisions also require more openness towards foreign investment identified with stage 3, which is common market. Furthermore, some regional trade agreements in the global south that describe themselves as a customs union and common market have not actually reached these levels of integration. FTAs are much more common than customs union because they do not require difficult negotiations over a common extended tariff. And I have some firsthand knowledge of this because in my other life, I work in a lot of Africa trade and investment facilitation, US Africa trade and investment facilitation. And I can confirm that there are some challenges, although in practice, the Africa free trade area is the largest free trade area in the world. There are constraints, regulatory constraints, which is border enforcement, customs enforcement for each country, and the lack of infrastructure that that can facilitate trade between African countries. That is also a significant challenge. So although these stages are only models, excuse me, they do, however, provide general guidance to the process by which states become more integrated. This is especially true for the EU, the most advanced regional trade agreement. Coming full circle, let us conclude by examining the theoretical perspectives between regionalism and international political economy. In some cases, multilateralism and regionalism are competing approaches to trade. Where multilateralism contributes to global trade liberalization, regionalism may divide the world into competing trading blocs. However, open regionalism can break down national barriers and serve as a stepping stone rather than an obstacle to global free trade. RTAs following open regionalism abolish barriers on substantially all trade within the RTA and lower trade barriers to outsiders. So one example, again, going back to the European Union example, and that's because it's really the most aggressive and the most integrated regional trade agreement. So the European Union has a common trade position. So you don't have to negotiate trade agreements with individual member states. You negotiate trade agreements with the institution of the European Union. And as we speak, the European Union over the past at least 10 years has been negotiating with the United States for a free trade agreement between the bloc and the United States. This will be consistent with open regionalism. What would be more helpful, I suspect, is if the European Union were to be able to negotiate a free trade agreement with USMCA. But that is unable to happen because USMCA is in reality a free trade agreement, and member countries, the US, Canada to the north, and Mexico to the south, have the right to negotiate trade independent of each other. But at least the principle is that the United States and the entire member countries of the European Union can negotiate a free trade agreement. It is, as such, also helpful to acknowledge that there are sources of conflict between countries in regional trade agreements. And these include reduction of economic sovereignty and independence of economic policies. So part of what informed Britain to leave the European Union, a big part of it, some would argue, was xenophobia, a fear that the United Kingdom was being overrun by especially Central European countries. And I'm thinking of Poland as an example. And there became this idea that the challenges of being in the EU single market exceeded the benefits of being in the single market. I think facts are continuing to bear that assumption to be flawed. And it led Britain to secede from the European Union. Part of the other argument also is that the British government, at least the Conservative Party of the Great Britain, wanted to regain sovereignty to negotiate independent of other countries, its own trade relations with other nations of the world. Again, I think that events will bear that the clout of negotiating as part of a larger bloc would ultimately prove more beneficial than independent Britain negotiating on its own, because Britain is a small market. And this leads to the other major source of conflict, independence of economic policies. In this instance, Britain was had it a little better than other countries in the European Union, because as I mentioned, the UK was able to maintain its currency, the pound, and therefore its monetary policy. And it did not necessarily have to harmonize its fiscal policy as strictly as other countries that are in the Eurozone. Let me also clarify, and I think some people get confused when they hear the words Britain, United Kingdom, UK, England, and Scotland. So the United Kingdom, just for clarity, and this is an aside, and if this adds to the nugget of information you get out of the class, then so be it, we've done well. The United Kingdom is a country that is made up of 3 nations: Wales, England, Scotland, and actually there are 4 of them, Northern Ireland, which is different from the Republic of Ireland. Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland are on the same island called Ireland. And within that island are 2 different countries. The Republic of Ireland is a sovereign country that is part of the European Union, and Northern Ireland is part of the United Kingdom of Great Britain. The United Kingdom of Great Britain includes Wales, England, Scotland, and Northern Ireland. But to keep it simple, we'll just call it the UK. So this concludes our 3-part series that, of course, began in Module 8. For our office hour lecture next week and for our assignments and assessments next week, we will focus on multilateral cooperations. So this might be the time to ask any questions to the extent that there is one.
No, Professor, that's it. No questions for
Excellent.
me.
All right. So I will take it that we have effectively covered the assessments for this week, and we have had an honest to goodness lecture during this office hour. And I do wish everyone the best of luck. And I'll try to post this video on Blackboard, this lecture on Blackboard, as quickly as Zoom makes it available to me. Thank you very much. Happy Halloween.
Thank you, Professor. Have a good day.
You too.
Bye.